Welcome, bienvenue. Welcome from the étranger, stranger. Glick, glick, je suis enchanté. Happy to see you, bleib, restez, stay. Welcome and bienvenue. Welcome en cabaret to cabaret. Welcome and bienvenue. Welcome. I'm a big fan of this podcast called the Seriously Wrong podcast. I think I'm going to keep this. I don't know what this is. And it follows a pair of guys who are libertarian socialists, basically. They draw off of a lot of degrowth thinkers, as well as this guy Murray Bookchin, who I'm a big fan of. Murray Bookchin has called himself a lot of different things: an anarchist, a communalist. He's also been an anti-anarchist at certain points in his writing, so maybe he's not an anarchist. He's definitely in that libertarian socialism-y range, alright? And one of his ideas is that there's multiple components to a totality of conditions that allow a truly democratic society to flourish, alright? And he uses the phrase necessary but insufficient to describe a lot of these components of his worldview. And I really love this phrase. I love the way he describes it. He talks about civil rights, freedom of speech, direct democracy. And when he says direct democracy, he means town hall, communal, direct democracy, where people meet in person and everyone votes. Like real direct democracy. No holds barred, and not an alienated form of direct democracy where we vote on every issue on a national basis, but a more localized form of direct democracy, a more community-focused form of direct democracy. And he also combines this with a degree of economic collective foundation. He believes that in order to have a functioning democracy, you can't just have majority rule. You also need to have full emancipation, might be the right word. Full, we're spacing on the word. Full, everybody's able to vote. Everybody's able to vote. Majority rule, and you need freedom of speech too. This is an idea from Rawls, from John Rawls, the liberal thinker, that freedom of speech is actually a foundation of democracy. Because if you just have like this majority, and they do whatever they want, then that majority, the second you get a majority on one side, they can just silence the minority in the absence of freedom of speech. And then that minority no longer has full participation in politics and cannot change people's minds to destabilize the majority. And so you can actually get to a point where an increasingly small minority of people rule over the government just by constantly purging minority. And by minority, I mean political minorities, by purging political minorities over and over again until only their little circle is really allowed to participate in society. The Nazis did this to an extent. I would say the communists also did this to an extent under Stalin. These purges, for the Nazis, it was like, oh, let's get rid of the communists. Oh, let's get rid of the social democrats. Oh, let's get rid of the trade unionists. And by the time they came for the Jews, there was no one left to stop them. That's the quote, right, about the Nazis. And with the communists, it was these purges of reactionary thought. Let's get rid of this set of reactionary thought. Let's get rid of these people are real communists. They shouldn't be in the Communist Party. Over and over again until only your tiny little circle exists. And that is fundamentally about a lack of liberalism. That is fundamentally about a lack of freedom of speech, a lack of the principles of democracy outside of just pure majoritarianism. That was sort of what was missing that allowed that totalitarianism to take place. For Bookchin, civil rights of non-discrimination also fall into this picture, because if black people, who are a minority of the population, are allowed to be discriminated against by a majority of the population, then that sort of ousts them from polite society more generally in a way that doesn't allow them to fully participate in democracy and in society. And so for him, civil rights and freedom of speech are both part of democracy, and you cannot have democracy without both of those things. And so he actually advocates a sort of a constitutionalism that integrates all of these foundational components of democracy, including communal autonomy, direct democracy. He believes in constitutional protections for certain economic guarantees. He believes that we should guarantee a certain amount of economic livelihood to everybody, because in the absence of that economic basis, people cannot participate in democracy. If you're homeless, you're going to have a harder time participating, is sort of the idea here. And so he has this sort of totalizing theory of democracy. I'll admit, I'm drawn to this idea sometimes. And I think there's like good parts of this idea. I like this idea. This is an idea I've said that I believe at times. But surprise, this video isn't about that. Yeah, that's right. I tricked you again. A little while ago, I made a video about left voluntarism, right? And in left voluntarism, I talked about the libertarian case against civil rights and laws of non-discrimination. Now, I'm doing the flip side. I'm doing the reverse of that. Now I'm talking about the case for civil rights of non-discrimination. And if you'll notice, the difference here has to do with trust, right? In a Bookchinian communalist theory, which is a theory of libertarian socialism, right? In order to totally include everybody and have a fully functioning democratic society, you need to preemptively prevent discrimination by majorities. So you need to hold majorities accountable to these minorities so that you can have a more holistic society that includes everyone and not just a simple majority of everyone. So for him, this authority is necessary. The authority of forcing people not to discriminate is necessary for society to function. Whereas for the left voluntarists, they have to trust. They have to trust that people will individually choose not to discriminate. They have to choose to believe that people will, in their own natural way, take upon themselves not discriminating. Or rather, actually, to discriminate wisely. To discriminate only in positive ways. Because they do argue for positive forms of discrimination. So yet again, we come to human nature again. Right? At the center of this conversation is, again, a secret little conversation between rationality and irrationality. Because the rational side views people as sort of logical enough to come to their own conclusions, right? So you could say the libertarian side views people as fundamentally rational, as fundamentally capable of not discriminating if we leave it up to them, and thus deserving of that freedom. It's like the porn conversation. They're rational enough to deserve their freedom, and we don't need to intervene. Whereas the Murray Bookchin side of things emphasizes people's irrationality. It emphasizes people's fundamentally irrational nature and preemptively uses collective authority to prevent that irrationality. So there's a line through here where authority is about thinking people are irrational and liberty is about trusting people's rationality. And it runs through so many different things that when you see it, you'll shit bricks. When you'll see it, you'll shit whatever this is. I think it's orichalcum. Who's putting orichalcum at Abel Hutchins's grave? from 1878. Is this a did I find a vampire? Orichalcum is like a thing, like you use it like holy water. This is a thing people believe, you use this like holy water. Did I find a fucking vampire? Vampires are real. That's the new thesis. That's the new thesis of the video, is that vampires are real.